Usimna's efforts are of a powerful rank. Well, in Ukraine, almost every day they talk about victory here, victory there, and here's a so-called victory, and there's another so-called victory, and grab a so-called victory here and here as well. But in reality, things are a little different, and that's what we'll talk about today. Subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. And first, as usual, we'll show what kind of so-called victory comes from ordinary citizens. That is, not those barbershop guys who sit in expensive cars. For like 20, 30, 100, 180, there's no limit, just dollars. But those who run through the streets from the territorial recruitment centers, from those very people catchers so loved by the people, war veterans. Sorry for the expression, yeah, a Freudian slip. So here in Hydro Park, they're catching another unfortunate person to send off. Where and why they're sending him, well, you can figure that out yourself. So, someone came here to relax, arrived, and interestingly, there aren't any recruiters from the Territorial Recruitment Center here. It's just the police here, the police who are supposed to protect citizens, to shield them from lawlessness, the police who are paid with the taxes of Ukrainians and from those who pay taxes, at least for now. And suddenly, this very police. The police who are supposed to protect us, well, they grab you, beat you, and that's it, basically. That's how it goes. Unfortunately, I can't show this video in full, but you can watch it on my channel. Just point your smartphone or tablet camera at this QR code and you'll go straight there. Or, if you're suddenly watching me from a mobile device, right here in the video description, the very first or maybe the second line, there's the link to the Telegram channel, and you'll end up there as well. And now let's see what these privileged soldiers, let's say from Kiev, think about the ordinary people. So today I found a video of this strange character, I don't even know who he is, on a show called Character. You'd think this person would be a scientist, but surprisingly, he's not a scientist. And he's talking about how the so-called elite despises ordinary citizens, regular people who aren't fighting, especially those who consciously choose not to fight because they don't want to die. Looking at this character, well, they've shown frontline soldiers so many times. Well, it's almost dystrophy there, you know, people who have dirt under their nails, beards that aren't trimmed, they just don't have time to shave their heads. Excuse my language, but to grow that out, and then to appear on some channel with that much nerve. But they go on and tell ordinary citizens what they should do?
Send them abroad, that's it, for 20 or 30 years, like let them sit there.
I'll forbid those citizens from coming back, but who are they and why? This isn't politics, it's just a nobody, but somehow they've risen up and now they're telling ordinary citizens what to do.
Maybe they're getting ready for retirement, maybe Hawaii is next.
But why for that? Is there a reason? He's calling for Ukrainians to be locked up in, I wanted to say, a digital concentration camp. Well, I mean in the country of dreams, to lock people up in pink bushes so that no one can leave anywhere.
To give the right to vote, not having participated in the fate of the country, no.
Did not participate. Участвовав is mixed Russian-Ukrainian speech. That's Russian, there is no word участвовал in Ukrainian, there is the word участ, but it means something completely different in Ukrainian than what this person thinks. Did not participate. So, if you want to advocate for the Ukrainian language, for pure Ukrainian, you need to use clean native Ukrainian, not this kind of mishmash like these kinds of people do.
Now in the war, he represented the country, he represented everyone else.
But here, everyone else, that's also Surzik. Honestly, lessons, Ukrainian lessons from the Europa channel for Ukrainians. Come on over. How much should I charge you? 50 euros from each of you. So, whoever is watching, pay 50 euros right away, and that's it. As for the others, but in general, people like that just demotivate ordinary Ukrainians because they don't even know Ukrainian. They don't know anything at all. These are people who used to just hang out in the stairwell, to put it bluntly, drinking beer, and then suddenly they were promoted to some kind of leadership positions, and suddenly they take advantage of it, not paying attention to their illiteracy. In fact, they consider it some kind of privilege.
Why even bother voting there?
Nobody wants to vote anymore, my god. In this country, it doesn't matter who you vote for, or if you vote at all, you'll get, well, you know what, chthonic serenity. Let's put it that way. And the fact that
They'll be rubbing shoulders among themselves. They'll be posting all this on the internet, writing all this stuff. Well, let them write. What difference does it make to me?
well, if you want to share your personal feelings, it's better to go to a psychologist. And so, if you've called yourself a mushroom, especially since this character really does look like one, then get in the basket and then you can communicate with your own kind there. And as for what worries people like that, honestly, I think nobody else cares at all. So they sit there in their studios and there are way fewer of them, like an order of magnitude less. That means 1/10 as many. If it's 10 or 100 times, then 1 order of magnitude is 10 times, and 2 orders of magnitude is 100 times. Well, I'm sure there are orders of magnitude fewer of them than regular reasonable citizens who are just afraid to express their position right now. Because, well, something like that might suddenly pop up and say, hey, let's go to the front lines.
And it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect the people around me. They just forgive one thing.
All right. From here on, she just talks about what's going on with his circle, how things are in his circle. We're not interested in that at all. Let them hang out there, splash around in their pools, sprinkled, so to speak, with holy water, jump with their legs, but do what they haven't done before, that is, performing in studios. They don't do anything else. These are all those thousands of talking heads. Some heads are bigger, some are smaller, but they're all doing the same thing. It's the same message being delivered. A thought that, again, they get fed from some talking points. Next, who else do we have there? Besides all these characters, there's also a presidential advisor with the nickname Flash. I don't know why they give each other these nicknames, but he has one. And this Flash, who is not Flashman, it's just Flash. Well, anyway, with X, a Russian actress, she starred in 2 TV series. Yanina Sokolova gets her point across again. She's speaking in terrible Surzic. It's such terrible Surzic that as a native Ukrainian speaker, surprisingly, if you didn't know, I'm Ukrainian with both Ukrainian and Russian as my native languages. I have 2 native languages. It's just awful to listen to all of this.
We understand why there are some solar factors, and now the Russians are attacking our gas stations.
And Rosyan? He took that from Zelensky. The first one started with Ruski. This one says Rossiane. And for some reason, in their opinion, the word Ruski, which is used to denote the nation, the nationality, should sound derogatory. It's very strange.
He does it powerfully, already about 200 powerfully. Those 250 gas stations, they attacked, kept attacking, but here our business also understands what to do. I think we will take steps to create some mobile gas stations of a slightly different format, so that there will be fuel.
Fuel is Poln. At first he used the word Poln. Apparently he looked it up in a dictionary and then switched to his own, well, native word, so to speak. And he uses those words, well, I don't know how much you can hear the difference in pronunciation between a Ukrainian and this character, but this is pure Surzic. That is, it's a hard ending, these are hard letters, while Ukrainian is a soft melodic language. But what we hear from the screen, especially with this so-called fuel, that's not Ukrainian.
It can be refueled. There was fuel. The fuel will be supplied from abroad. So I'm just asking that every family that has, for example, a generator or a business, keeps a first reserve of, say, 10 liters so that we don't have this first day of collapse when there are lines and this kind of chain reaction.
A chain, basically? Here it's mixed Russian-Ukrainian speech on top of more mixed Russian-Ukrainian speech. You know, I think even the host is looking at him and thinking, oh my god, I wish I had stayed a Russian actress. But no. In the end, and by the way, honestly, I don't understand why they're doing their interview in some bar where there's a pile of bottles with, you know, the kind of stuff a lot of people like to drink. Why? For what reason? It's absolutely impossible to understand. It would be one thing if they were doing it the way they like to, you know, putting on a net like this, let me put it on like that, and pretending that you're right on the front line or even behind enemy lines, like you've been dropped into the enemy's rear and you're fighting your way through enemy bodies with your teeth. But in a bar with alcohol, I don't understand what the idea is supposed to be. As someone somewhat close to the media, I don't understand why this is happening or who these people are. Did the screenwriter come up with this, or the director if they have one, or who did it and why? Moreover, this character on the left, he's sitting there clutching his own knee, but he looks insecure. Film him differently somehow. Well, let him read the speech that needs to be read in the purest Ukrainian language. But there are still some experts left among these authorities, I hope, who know classical Ukrainian. It's like they say, sorry for the advanced Ukrainian lesson instead of pratsuvati. Well, it sounds, well, as they say, camp-style Ukrainian pratsuvati. They say pratsuvati, that's in Polish. Well, it's not pure Polish, but that's the pronunciation, pratsuvati. Well, and that's how they pronounce it. Why, for what reason, I don't know. Well, naturally, the Ministry of Rhetorical Questions, or Zolotai Yurd from the dairy rigs of Ukraine, could answer that. But these characters probably can't answer. And now let's see what's going on in the Kingdom of Denmark. Here, Zelensky was dealt a powerful stab in the back. And this is connected to the smiling envoy Stefanishina. Here, we're already getting messages saying, not by some Ukrainian or Russian language outlet, nothing like that. It's a patriotic publication, Strana UA. And here they're telling us about a case against a fighter, against a former one. The case of the Ukrainian ambassador, or rather Olha Stefanishina, was used as a stab in the back against Volodymyr Zelensky's power structure. The formal reason for serving Stefanishina with a notice of suspicion. It seemed the suspicion was about undeclared apartments and cars. And the name that is the ambassador herself was actually using or owning them. She registered them under her mother, father, cousin, grandnephew, and great-aunt. But nevertheless, a significant amount of money went there. This case is described here, but it's all boring. I mean, corruption, you know, is boring. Especially when it's all illuminated by a spotlight and looked at from above. It looks, well, simple, and you think, how is that possible? Couldn't you come up with some other scheme? The worst thing is that in Ukraine right now, this shows that the whole state is rotting. From head to tail, from tail to head, and not only in Ukraine, by the way. In many countries, both post-Soviet and others, it shows up in exactly the same way. I can't say about Belarus, because I have an acquaintance there who's satisfied with everything and all that, but, for example, in Russia, things aren't so good. There's corruption there too. They seem to keep it under control, and I remember what was the name of that Swedish show. Well, basically billions and billions are just flowing through corruption there, and it's everywhere. It feels like the post-Soviet space is, well, as if it's rotten, a breeding ground for corrupt officials. They're everywhere, of course, in Europe, in the US, and in China. But in China, for example, corrupt officials are executed, especially the really big ones, unlike in the US. A different situation is developing here now. I think we'll watch another video about it. I'll record it. And in Europe, for now, well, it all apparently still needs to unfold, to develop further and further. It's terrible what's happening and how it's unfolding. Let's return to our Stefanishin. Right now, we're being told there's a struggle going on with the president, with this Zelensky. But they're already saying that in Buenos Buizap it's the corrupt officials themselves. So, as soon as they started exposing some schemes, they immediately begin to say, yeah, well, they're bad themselves. Now even Fedorov, whom the former defense minister accuses of lobbying for the interests of a major Ukrainian party. Drone manufacturers, this has never happened before, and now it's happening again to everyone. But in short, Stefanishina and some other figures are being used, for example, Chernyshev, who disappeared to an unknown place. He was with the Ministry of Minmine, yes, excuse my language, that's the Ministry of Unity, which was supposed to work on bringing Ukrainians back to Ukraine from abroad. Suddenly it turned out that this person had some problems with the law. That's how it is, just like that. Well, that's it. Then suddenly he announces, come on, brothers, let's strike there, let's sink our teeth into the enemy's body. And then it turns out that he was actually sinking his teeth into either black caviar or red caviar or a baguette with truffle sauce or something else like that. But clearly not into the enemy. And you start asking yourself, how long will this go on? What's actually happening? Next, Zelensky says, or rather he used to say, that there is a 40-day plan to influence Russia. Now he says that suddenly the DPRK, that is North Korea, has a plan to strengthen its contingent in Russia. And this very North Korea has delivered new ballistic missiles. Against these ballistic missiles, Zelensky himself stated the cities of Ukraine, including Kiev, have no defense against them. Roughly speaking, air defense systems are not designed to shoot down ballistic missiles. You have all those much praised drones. There, excuse my language, there are what sounds like Pi Zuni. That's from the official drone names PI-1 and Sun. So it's hard to interpret it any other way. By the way, it was touched upon by that very Senator Graham, who has since passed away, and since then there's been no sign of him and no word from him since. Well, anyway. And it turns out there's no defense against ballistic missiles, but Zelensky says it's a so-called victory. A victory. And what should be done? I mean, maybe he's hoping that Patriot will be given to him, or something else. He talks about how they hit some oil refining facilities there. How this, right now, affects Ukraine's defense capability is absolutely impossible to understand. Yes, you hit somewhere. Yes, you blew up an oil refinery somewhere 2,000 kilometers away from Ukraine. So what? Where is the relief? Have the attacks decreased? No, you yourself say that this very same guy with a nickname, Pantyar, I think, is talking about how Russia is ready to send 200 ballistic missiles a day to Ukraine. 200 ballistic missiles. And he just says this plainly. Well, you know, Russia is going to do this. But it seems like you yourself just swapped one thing for another. You were saying now we were capturing that Kursk region, then something else, and you kept showing it all the time. In the end, it turned out to be something... Well, it's like that Humpty Dumpty who fell off the wall, then all the king's horses and all the king's men tried to put him together again, but it just didn't work. Well, honestly, as long as I've been watching these processes, there has been very little success. Then Zelensky had a conversation with the Prince of Saudi Arabia about what they're preparing as part of the drone deal. I don't know why drone deal is pronounced and written in Ukrainian as drone deal. Let me show you. But this very drone deal can be rendered as, well, a deal. A deal for drones, an agreement on drones, import of drones, export of drones. It doesn't matter. In some places, Zelensky is almost depicted hugging this very Prince of Saudi Arabia, but he just talked to him on the phone. Well, anyway, they talked and that's it. So what? Well, as a kind of conclusion, this is probably the interesting part. There are articles published by the Ukrainian side. By some journalists, I think here's an article taken from The Atlantic, it was published as well. It says here that Ukraine has turned from a weapons recipient into a security provider for the US. What? What's going on? A security provider for the US? And there are such statements there that you can't just shoehorn that in. I don't even know how big that globe would have to be. And how big would that owl have to be at minimum to even try to make that work? And here it says that nothing worked out. But Ukraine has long ceased to look like a country begging NATO for help and instead appears as a source of military technology and know-how. Then why are you trying to join NATO? What's the purpose? Even Poroshenko, that very same Lyudina Krylem, stated a long time ago that now we're heading into NATO. He even inserted it all into the constitution. That's it. He tried to force what couldn't be forced, and we've been trying the impossible for years. Anyway, it is what it is. And now they're telling us about drones, about how this is basically a powerful victory, but in the end, nothing worked out. In the end, they say that despite the fact that Ukraine has turned from a beggar for weapons into a provider of security for the US. This article ends with a complaint and a universal lament that Raytheon and Lockheed will officially formalize their concerns about intellectual property theft and technology transfer. They're talking about the Patriot systems Ukraine was asking for. I don't know how they plan to build factories in Ukraine under the current conditions, when everything is being destroyed indiscriminately. And then they made a statement like this. Victory? Well, maybe. Honestly, I don't even know what can be called a victory anymore. Once, Zelensky called it a victory that Ukraine remained independent. But it was already independent in 2003, 2010, 2015, and in 2019, the year this person was elected. And now it seems that this is considered a victory. So why did so many people have to be killed? Why did hundreds of thousands of people have to die? That's a rhetorical question. Goodbye, everyone.
This is an eternal war. Every other generation of Ukrainians fights against the Russians. This war, in principle, can only end if Russia is destroyed, disintegrated, and in the east there are dozens of small states. And as long as the Kremlin manages to pull itself together again, if we don't completely destroy the Kremlin physically, we probably won't be able to do it. Then we will have peace. That's why we need to prepare not for just a year, 2 or 3, but for the fact that we must be in a permanent state of combat readiness.